In the year 1356, a battle took place that would shake the foundations of the French kingdom. It was a clash between two of the most powerful military forces of the medieval world. On one side, the French, led by their king, Jean II. On the other, the English, commanded by the daring Edward, the Black Prince. What followed was not just a fight for territory or glory, but a battle that would change the course of the 100 Years' War. How did the English manage to outwit the powerful French forces, despite overwhelming odds? What tactics did Edward the Black Prince use that led to one of the most astonishing victories of the Middle Ages? Get ready to discover the secrets of the Battle of Poitiers, a day when the French nobility was crushed and an English prince secured his place in history. Chapter 1: The Road to Poitiers. The Battle of Poitiers was fought in the midst of the 100 Years' War, a conflict that had already been raging for over 2 decades. England, under King Edward III, sought to assert its claim over the French throne, plunging both nations into a prolonged and bloody struggle. By 1356, the English had achieved several major victories, including the iconic Battle of Crécy, which had devastated the French knights. But the war was far from over. Edward's son, Edward the Black Prince, was now leading English forces in a campaign across the French countryside, pillaging and raiding French territories, burning towns, and taking prisoners. Meanwhile, France was in turmoil. King Jean II, also known as Jean the Good, had taken the throne, but his reign was marked by instability. The French army, still reeling from its earlier defeats, was in desperate need of a victory to restore the kingdom's honor and power. Chapter 2: The Prelude to Battle. In September of 1356, the Black Prince's army was retreating south after a successful campaign of raiding and looting in France. But their path took them dangerously close to the city of Poitiers, where the French army lay in wait. King Jean II, eager to crush the English once and for all, assembled a massive force of around 12,000 men, including the elite French knights and cavalry. He was determined to surround and annihilate the English army, which numbered just 6,000 men. The English, outnumbered 2-1, knew they couldn't win in a straightforward battle. But Edward the Black Prince was a master tactician, and he had a plan. His army took up a strong defensive position on a ridge, protected by thick hedges and natural terrain, forcing the French to attack uphill. What the French didn't know was that the Black Prince intended to use one of the most deadly weapons in his arsenal, the longbow. Chapter 3: The Battle Begins. On the 19th of September 1356, the battle began. The French cavalry, confident in their superiority, charged up the hill towards the English lines. But as they advanced, the English longbowmen unleashed a storm of arrows. The French knights, weighed down by heavy armor, struggled in the uneven terrain. Horses were brought down by arrows, and the cavalry charge faltered. The English longbowmen, positioned behind natural cover, were able to fire with deadly accuracy, decimating the French forces. Despite the initial setback, King Jean was not ready to give up. He reorganized his forces and launched a second assault, this time sending in his infantry alongside the remaining cavalry. But once again, the English defensive position held firm. The French struggled to break through the English lines, and the longbowmen continued to pick off French soldiers from a distance. The tide of the battle was turning in favor of the outnumbered English. Chapter 4: The Black Prince's Trap. Edward the Black Prince had been waiting for the right moment to strike. While the French were focused on breaking the English lines, he had kept a small reserve of mounted knights hidden, ready to charge. As the French army grew more and more disorganized, the Black Prince's cavalry swept around the flank, hitting the French from the side. The surprise attack threw the French forces into chaos. What had been a battle of attrition suddenly turned into a rout. King Jean II, seeing his army collapse, fought bravely at the front lines. But with his forces crumbling, he and his son, along with several high-ranking nobles, were surrounded and captured by the English. Chapter 5: The Aftermath. The Battle of Poitiers was over. Against overwhelming odds, Edward the Black Prince had led his army to one of the most spectacular victories of the 100 Years' War. Thousands of French soldiers lay dead or captured, and the French nobility was in shambles. But the most shocking outcome of the battle was the capture of the French king himself. Jean too was taken to England as a prisoner of war, where he would remain in captivity for several years. His ransom would cripple France financially and further weaken its military power. The capture of King Jean too left France in chaos. With their king imprisoned, the French government was thrown into disarray, and the English were able to press their advantage on the battlefield and in negotiations. Chapter 6: The Legacy of Poitiers. The Battle of Poitiers was more than just a military victory for the English, it was a turning point in the 100 Years' War. It demonstrated the power of strategic thinking and the effectiveness of the English longbow, solidifying England's dominance in the conflict. For Edward the Black Prince, Poitiers cemented his reputation as one of the greatest military commanders of his time. His victory at Poitiers was not just a triumph of arms, but a masterclass in leadership and battlefield tactics. The battle also had a profound impact on France. The defeat at Poitiers, coupled with the capture of the king, weakened the French monarchy and deepened the internal divisions that plagued the kingdom. It would take years for France to recover, and the repercussions of Poitiers would be felt for decades. Thank you for joining us on this exploration. Stay tuned for more historical adventures and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more captivating stories from around the world.